Shall we fly onwards then to Ikarie XB1?
Indeed. So we return here to the work of Stanislav Lem, the writer of Solaris, which we talked about in our 1970s science fiction episode for our final film, in the form of Jędrek Polak's Ikarie XB1, or Ikarie XB1, based on Lem's novel The Magellanic Cloud, a 1963 Czech film starring Zdeněk Štěpánek as Commander Abayev, Radovan Lukavsky as the unexpectedly named second-in-command MacDonald, Dana Majicka as sociologist Nina, and František Smolik as the mathematician Anthony Hopkins. No, really. It's 2163, and the spaceship Ikarie XB1 is leaving Earth on a mission to Alpha Centauri, in the hopes of finding intelligent life on one of its orbiting planets. While travelling, the crew faces the stresses of prolonged confinement. Gee, I wonder what that would be like. Separation from home, and the knowledge that, due to time dilation, their loved ones will have aged 15 years by the time they return, while for them only 28 months will have passed, as well as a number of other stressors, including for one member the prospect of giving birth for the first time in deep space. After discovering a derelict 20th century spacecraft and pouring withering scorn on the people of the 20th century and their immoral weapons, the Ikarie approaches Alpha Centauri and the crew identify a target, dubbed the White Planet, as being the likeliest candidate for life. Soon thereafter, though, the crew suddenly begin to experience strange and inexplicable symptoms of fatigue and tiredness. This is eventually traced back to a dark star, a body detectable only by its effect on other things, which is emitting a radiation that will be fatal if the Ikarie doesn't get out of its range. Help from an unexpected source aids in this regard, but the secondary effects of the radiation on two crew members is more extreme, causing one of them to break and to put the ship and the lives of the crew at risk. I find that I'm struggling to say much about Ikarie XB1. In the most reductive terms, it's passengers on a long trip have some conversations. One of them goes a bit doolally and threatens to kill them all. He doesn't. Oh, and there's a robot called Patrick. But I really enjoyed it. While it's in some ways spartan and sombre, it's a thoughtful and contemplative film with interesting and believable characters and terrible, terrible dancing, and is far more sophisticated than most science fiction fare of its time. It's also visually striking, with its stark black and white photography looking simply beautiful. In the beginning, it's simply enjoyable to spend time with the crew. From the eager young man looking to press his luck with the new female crew member, to the slightly sulky older man who is dragged along his pet robot, and who won't do as he's told, damn it, and take his damn vitamin supplement, instead feeding it to the dog. And the frustrated MacDonald, whose daughter will be 15 by the time he meets her. That leads to being much more invested when danger approaches, and there's a feel to the piece not a million miles away from Star Trek. The good Star Trek, particularly The Next Generation. No place here for Michael Burnham. Not least the Ikarie's Enterprise D-like resemblance to a luxury cruise liner. Oh, and also in its utopianism. A Greek-derived word meaning a state where bloody Star Trek Discovery never existed.
Not that you're bitter about it.
Not that I have strong feelings, Scott. No. It's an intelligent and engaging drama that I do not hesitate to recommend.
Yes, a very welcome surprise with this one, because I hadn't heard of it at all before it popped up on this list, and it's easily my favourite film of this episode.
Mine too. And sorry, Scott, just before you... This came from the same list that War of the Worlds came from. It's like swings and roundabouts, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I even looked up what it was when I get to this, so I was picking up very strong vibes of sort of the other Stanislav Lem work that you mentioned, which is now gone out of my head already.
Solaris.
Yeah. I was getting sort of fairly strong Solaris vibes towards the end of this, and by extension, things that kind of aped Solaris, like Sunshine and these other kind of ones of the effects of a long voyage on peoples, and unfortunately also brought flashbacks of Passengers, which was awful. But yeah, this really quite good, and it felt incredibly modern in a way. I mean, it's only, what's this, 6 years, was it, after Forbidden Planet or something like that? And whereas Forbidden Planet felt like something that is a million miles away from any science fiction film that was released today, Ikarie XB1 would require almost no tweaks to the script to make it be a kind of modern science fiction outing. Extend bits of this, split it up, and you've got a very competent Netflix miniseries.
Yeah, and to be honest, not all that many tweaks to the sets or anything like that. It's just, there's nothing.
No. So
apart from maybe a couple of miniatures, which look like miniatures, and the weird 1960s you can see of having swirling lights. But it has to be everything beyond that. It doesn't look hugely dated.
Yeah, the science that's there kind of more or less holds up in a way that it certainly doesn't for some of the other stuff we've spoken about today. It all kind of makes sense. It's got nice, strong characters that you come to care about. It's even kind of edited in a way that's more modern with the kind of the setup and the flashbacks and all that kind of stuff, the little kind of preview you get at the start of it and kind of going back into it. Lots of cool little things in there. Yes, it's just a very engaging story. There's lots of little details in here that you can kind of latch on into and kind of really get invested with. Sure, in the kind of meta sense of the narrative, there's maybe arguably not all that much happening, but the stuff that is happening there is really quite interesting. Lots of interesting little set pieces, little character details that makes it just a really engaging watch, and I enjoyed this heartily. A very, very welcome surprise here. A shame then that a lot of Stanislav Lem's other stuff tends not to get adapted. I think Lem himself seems to have the kind of Alan Moore approach to anything that's adapted. He just hates everything he's done by just on a matter of principle. But I would really like to see, and I suppose I could just read more of his work, but even then I think a lot of it's not been translated. But yeah, really interesting stuff that's going on here, and it just felt like it felt closer to a documentary for this kind of thing than it did feeling to the kind of like classic science fiction of the kind of like swashbuckling era. This felt very modern in comparison, and yes, I enjoyed this greatly.
Yeah, it did feel, not just because it's the latest filmed chronologically, but it did feel the most modern. I didn't think about it much while I was watching, but after I'd watched it, I was preparing my review for it. I did it did strike me as so much more, I mean, not in every way, of course, but it did really feel like a Star Trek-y sort of thing.
Absolutely.
The good TNG episodes where the crew would have a problem and they would talk to each other.
Yeah.
And they would work it out, not Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
Not that that's a bugbear of mine. And certainly not Star Trek. So like good Picard, not Star Trek Picard. Yeah. Where like they would talk and solve a problem and they would do it intellectually and things, even like slightly less kind of nonsense science fiction in this. It's kind of like there's more kind of science fiction in this, and in many ways it just felt like much more modern. As you say, you could update this quite easily, and it wouldn't feel dated at all without having to make very many changes whatsoever. I wouldn't say surprised because I went into this with no expectations at all. Yeah, particularly because by the time I watched this, I had seen the War of the Worlds that, as I said, coming from that same list, and like I'd hated that. I'll just try and keep myself intelligent. This is a really, really interesting film, really entertaining, and I thoroughly, thoroughly recommend this. However, if you're listening to this and are intrigued by this, please, whatever you do, if you want to watch Ikarie XB1, get the recently restored Czech version. The original version, because this was released in the 1960s in the United States and was on television for many years thereafter, known as Voyage to the End of the Universe, which is, let's put it as politely as I can, butchered, with 10 minutes cut out, messing about with the characters, and a stunt ending which basically turns the ending of it into the Planet of the Apes. So, whoever's responsible for that can do one. But chances are they have done. It was the 1960s. They're probably dead now, so that's good. And if that sounds harsh, good. It's just be careful because there's a particularly terrible version of this that has been destroyed, and the good version from like the actual original creator as it was meant to be. Oh, just also Ikarie XB1 significant for Do you remember those LA Gear trainers that lit up when you stood in them? That were all the rage in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, I think. Yeah, apparently they came from this film because they're in there.
Yes. The kind of magnetic boots thing that show that their back's been magnetised.
That light up every time they stand down. Yeah. That really amused me. Who would have thought that's where they came from? Relatively obscure Soviet-era Czech film. There we go. I don't know if you looked into this. I forgot to because I kind of ran out of time. I would love to know the derivation of the name of the fatal nerve gas that was used to kill the crew of the 20th Century Spacecraft that's discovered. Tigger fun. That's a bit weird.
Yes, it is. It's very strange.
I had no handle on that at all. It's described, at least in the subtitles, as Tigger fun, aka Tiger's Breath, that was used to, and had on board handily for some reason, to kill the crew of the 20th Century Spacecraft to discover because they've run out of oxygen. Or they had run out of oxygen. Tigger fun. Is this a Disney reference?
Yes.
Is it bouncy, 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 fun, 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 fun?
Fun genocide, yes. No, I've no knowledge, or indeed apparently has Google on a quick look. It does not make a look of sense to me. No, it's just a strange combination of things. Yes.
Yeah, it's like fatal toxic gas of some description called Tigger fun. Okay, what? Yeah, yes. And the only time the obvious Tigger is the one from Winnie the Pooh. So what? That strange. Answers on a postcard, please.
The wonderful thing about Tigger is murder and genocide. Yes, very peculiar, isn't it?